This is your GIS News for Wednesday, October 30. Plans to develop a transshipment port within the Portland Bight protected area can be executed with the appropriate measures to protect the environment. That's the overall assessment coming out of an environmental management scoping study commissioned by the Port Authority of Jamaica. It was done to assess the likely impact of the $1.5 billion transshipment port proposed by China Harbour Engineering Company for the Goat Islands and lands in the Old Harbour Bay area. Transport Works and Housing Minister Dr. Omar Davies says the study suggests that fisherfolk operating in the area would not be significantly displaced by the development.
Mr. Speaker, there are 3 areas zoned as fish sanctuaries. The only sanctuary likely to be impacted by the proposed project, and I say likely, is the Galleon Bay, which is already experiencing natural degraded performance.
In a statement to Parliament Tuesday, Dr. Davies said the scoping study highlighted that the Portland Bight protected area was not exclusively an environmental conservatory and was intended to facilitate multiple activities in a sustainable manner. It recommends that measures to protect and enhance the environment be undertaken alongside the proposed development. The Transport Minister said a framework agreement for the development should be in place by the end of January 2014 and will take into account the issues identified in the environmental scoping study. A team from the International Monetary Fund (IMF) will visit Jamaica in mid-November to conduct a review of the country's performance under the Extended Fund Facility (EFF). This will be the second review under the program, following the conclusion of the first quarterly evaluation by the IMF Executive Board in September. Resident representative of the IMF, Bert Van Selm, says the team is expected to review Jamaica's performance for the quarter ending September and take a forward look at how the country is expected to perform in subsequent quarters. While addressing a Jamaica Exporters Association breakfast forum on Tuesday, he praised the government's performance to date.
I am very happy to be able to report that the program is off to an excellent start. But of course, we also all know that we have a long way to go. Jamaica's Extended Fund Facility actually has 15 reviews planned, of which we have just concluded 1.
Jamaica was recently granted a second drawdown of $30.6 million from the IMF under the 4-year agreement, which brought total disbursements to about $240.4 million. Meanwhile, government has taken a major step towards fulfilling another of its commitments under the agreement with the IMF. On Tuesday, Finance and Planning Minister Dr. Peter Phillips tabled the Fiscal Incentives Miscellaneous Provisions Act and the Income Tax Relief, Large-Scale Projects and Pioneer Industries Act 2013 in the lower house of Parliament. Tabling these pieces of legislation meets an important structural benchmark agreed with the IMF, which involved a deadline to prepare and table legislation that sets out a consolidated, generalized incentives regime.
The new regime, Mr. Speaker, will be rules-based and non-discretionary, and therefore accessible to all Jamaicans and indeed to all investors, thereby leveling the playing field.
Dr. Phillips says the new incentive regime focuses on the granting of incentives to primary inputs to production.
It then incentivizes investment through streamlined and modernized capital allowances and that more closely accord with the useful lives of the assets that are being used, and it incentivizes the employment of labor through the instrument of employment tax credits.
Health Minister Dr. Fenton Ferguson says significant work is still needed to tackle the HIV/AIDS pandemic. He says part of that effort must be to eliminate the stigma and discrimination faced by persons affected by this illness.
Stigma and discrimination, especially homophobia, have been identified as major contributors to the spread of HIV/AIDS in the region. The Caribbean can realize the vision of 0 new HIV infections, 0 discrimination, 0 AIDS-related deaths. Let us continue to work towards that goal. This has to be very high on our post-2015 agenda.
Minister Ferguson was speaking at the Caribbean Broadcast Media Radio HIV/AIDS Live Up Song Competition Awards ceremony recently. Jamaica not only copped the first prize, but also placed second and fourth in the competition. And finally, the Ministry of Youth and Culture has been accelerating its drive to make the island's heritage more accessible to all. In addition to the opening of museums and cultural spaces, the Jamaica Cultural Development Commission staged a tribute to cultural icon Ranny Williams on the weekend. The event, held at the Ranny Williams Entertainment Center, also served to celebrate the 101st anniversary of Mas Ran's birth. Members of the public viewed displays, engaged in a cultural dialogue, and watched performances from several youth groups. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Stacey Ann Smith. Thank you for watching.